Hi everybody, welcome back to Bentley House. I'm Ara, and today I'm going to be telling you how I made these dollhouse curtains. They should be super easy to follow directions, hopefully, and fun to make. To start off, you're going to need some mat board. I talk about this a lot in my videos and I always get questions. Mat board can also be called crescent board or museum board. It's the stuff they use in frames to go around artwork. You can get it at most craft stores. You will also need some foam board, which you can get at a craft store. It's thicker and has a foam center. You'll need some aluminum foil. And you will also need a cutter, but if you do not have one of these long cutters, you can just use a ruler and an X-Acto knife. You will need an X-Acto. And you will also need some tacky glue. Elmer's would also work, but it may take longer for it to dry. Next, you're going to need some kind of container that you don't use for food because we're going to be putting glue in it. You will also need some sewing pins. You can use T-pins for this, which probably be easier on the fingers, but I grabbed my sewing pins. And you will also need some fabric scissors, which will make it a lot easier if they're dedicated fabric scissors. And whatever material you want to make your dollhouse curtains out of. To start out, we're going to be using the mat board, and I'm cutting long 1-inch strips of mat board. It doesn't matter how long it is because we're going to be cutting it into shorter lengths later on. If you can't find mat board, you can also probably use a couple layers of the cardboard that comes in cereal boxes. Now, most dollhouse windows have some sort of lip. It's usually a 1/16 inch lip on it. So what we are going to be making is a little shape that hugs the edge of the window frame. This is going to help your drapery or your curtains sit on top of the window frame. So what I did is I cut a piece that was about a 1/4 inch wider than the window itself, so you can see it sticks over about a 1/4 inch, and then I am marking where the edges of the window frame are, and later on I am going to cut that out. You'll see that in a second, so that this piece will sit right on top of my window. Now, if you're using a kit, chances are that your window frames are all the same, and so you really only need to make one of these as a pattern, and then you can make several without having to remeasure it inside of your dollhouse. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting out this center piece and leaving about a 1/4 inch all the way around, making this C shape that's going to sit on top of my window frame. So I go back, make sure it fits, and then I make as many as I need for my curtains. The next thing I need is my foam board, and I'm actually going to be covering this with the aluminum foil, and the only purpose for this is that it's protecting the foam board from getting wet, because if it gets wet it's going to crumple up and possibly get some kind of mold if you're using it multiple times. By using the foil, we can use it over and over again to make several sets of curtains. What I'm doing now is tracing the C shape towards the top of the foil. I'm doing this 2 times so I can make 2 sets of curtains at a time. And I'm doing it towards the top because I'm going to put a line at the bottom where the floor is. So I went into my dollhouse, I measured how far the top of the window is to the floor, and I'm putting a line so that I know how far I can make my drapes go down before they hit the floor. So now I have 2 C shapes at the top and I have 1 line at the bottom. Later on I will trace them in permanent marker so that you can see them a little bit better. Next, I'm going to take my fabric and I'm going to turn it wrong side up, and I'm going to start drawing out a rectangle. The rectangle is going to go from the floor line all the way up to the very top of the C shape, and I'm just making a rectangle that would cover that entire area. You will see me make it. And I'm going to need to make 2 of these per window. And the reason I'm not doing it right at the edge is because I need to leave a 1/2 inch border to make the hem of the fabric. So the line that I made is actually the line I'm going to be folding on, and the 1/2 inch that I'm leaving on the side is what I'm folding over. Now, as I said, you need to make 2 of these per window, so before I hem it, I want to make sure I have the same exact size piece for the second side, and so I'm just cutting that before I hem it. To hem the fabric, I decided to use glue, but if you have a sewing machine accessible, that is probably a better bet, because depending on the fabric, when you do the part that includes water, the hem could come undone if it starts like eating away at the glue, which did happen on my second set of curtains. Now, whenever I use glue to hem fabric, I try to use as little as possible, because it is a possibility that the glue can go through the fabric fibers and make a stain on the other side. It won't matter as much for these because we are going to be putting them into water that has glue in it, but it's just something I like to note whenever I show people that I'm using glue to hem fabric. And here you see I have done both panels, and so they are ready to go. Now I'm ready to make my water solution. I'm just going to pour a little bit of water, and then I'm going to start adding tacky glue until my solution looks like milk. Probably like 1% milk, if you know what that looks like. A little bit watery, but definitely you cannot see through it. And you want to mix this thoroughly. You will see what happens in a few minutes when you don't mix it thoroughly. Of course, everything's fixable, but just make sure you mix it up and scrape all the glue that might have sunk to the bottom so that it's mixed all the way through. Now you want to take your first panel and make sure you have your aluminum foil wrapped foam board available, and you're going to dunk it into the water. And if you don't mix it thoroughly, you can get patches of glue that stick onto your fabric. Luckily, because it's in a water bath, I just kind of bathed it back off of the fabric. But after this, I did go back and remix it up, make sure I got it thoroughly mixed. Make sure you wring out the fabric as best as you can, and then you are going to make very small accordion folds in the fabric. The smaller you can make the folds, the better it's going to look in miniature. So now I'm going to take this side of the curtain and I'm going to lay it down onto my foil and line it up with the right side of my C shape that I have drawn on top of the foil. What I want to do is take my sewing pins and I'm going to pin it onto the corner of the C shape. This helps me know that the shape that's eventually going to be on the back of the curtain will fit. Remember that the C shape actually fits over the top of the window frame, so this is how we know that it will cover the window completely. Now I'm going to spread out the curtain all the way to the center of the C shape and pin it again, and then I'm going to take pins and pin in between the folds of the curtain. You don't want to do this on the outside of the curtain because it will leave a hole that will be visible, so you want to make sure that it's in between the folds where it won't be seen as much. I will give you a closer up view of this in just a couple seconds. After you have the top pinned, you're going to start pulling the curtain down, and I'm putting one pin on the outside, and then I'm going to be pinning the very bottom of the curtain. I'm sorry it's a bit off screen for this, but you're trying to emulate the look of gravity. When you are using fabric that's real life size fabric, it doesn't show gravity in this small scale, so you are forcing this look by pinning these pieces in place. Now I'm pinning it so that it looks like the curtain is gathered to one side, and then I'm going to fan it out slightly on the bottom and put more pins in between the folds. If you would like for your curtain not to be pulled back, you can just make the folds go straight down. But I'm having both sides look like they're pinned back because I did work on the windows and I want the windows to be seen. So now I'm going to do a second window because I'm actually going to be showing you two different ways to finish the top of the curtains. This fabric was a little bit more difficult to work with the hem, and so it would have been better for me to have sewn that fabric. It depends on the type of fabric you're using. Now I'm using a pair of pliers to pull out the pins because they do get rather stuck in the foam board and it was hurting my hands to pull them out. It will also be stuck quite a bit to the aluminum foil, so just be patient while pulling it off. Also, it may unfold just slightly when you pull it off, but I'm going to be adding a strip of matching fabric to hold the middle folds in place. Also, once it's glued to the C shape, it will continue to hold its form at the very top. Now I'm adding tacky glue to the C shape, and I'm going to be lining up each curtain just like it was laid out on my aluminum foil. And I'm going to make sure that I overlap in the middle so that my two curtains overlap like they would if they were hanging down. And that's it for this part. And I'm going to flip them over so you can see how the C shape looks on the back. It should look just like it did on the aluminum foil where we traced it, but now it's glued onto the back. You can also add a second layer of the C shape if you would like to. It makes it a little bit easier to get it on and off the window. Now I'm going to be showing you a very easy way to make a top piece for your drapes. I'm taking a piece of mat board and I'm going to be drawing lines 1/4 of an inch outside of the drapes, and then I'm going to be drawing a line right at the edge of the drapes, and this is going to create a valance, I think is what it's called. I should have looked that up before I started doing the narration, but I'm gonna call it a valance. We're gonna create a valance this way. So I'm gonna cut off the initial piece that I marked off with the 1/4 inch extra on the outside, and then I'm going to score at the 1/4 inch mark so that I can bend the corner. And scoring means I'm not cutting all the way through, I'm just cutting the top layer of mat board, and then I can bend it backwards so that I have a 3D shape. So now you can see that it fits over the top of the curtains and all the way back towards the wall when it would be sitting in the dollhouse. Now I'm just going to take some tacky glue. I'm going to make sure and I spread it out thin with my finger so that it doesn't seep through the fabric. And then I'm going to cover it with the fabric that matches my curtains. I'm going to wrap it just like I would kind of wrap a present, and I'm going to make the sides just a little bit shorter to make this easier, but then I'm just going to add glue and I'm going to wrap the outside edges first, and then I'll just go around and wrap the top and bottom and then kind of push in the corners so that the entire thing is covered. This is probably the easiest way to put a top on your curtains, and it just gives it kind of a finished look, and it's super simple. So I highly suggest this way of doing it, but you can always add little extras like tassels if you want to make it a little bit fancy. It would be kind of fun to try some different tops, but this one and the one I'm showing you next, I think are kind of some of the most common ones you would see in a dollhouse. So here you can see I'm just adding a little bit more tacky glue and pushing in the ends. It doesn't have to be perfect because that side will be against the wall. So now that that's finished, I'm going to add it to the top of my curtains and kind of see where I want it to set. I don't have to line it up exactly with the very top of the curtains. I can push it up a little bit if I want to. And then I'm just going to add some glue to the folds of my curtain, and I'm going to glue it on, and then also add a little glue to the sides so that I can push in the sides of the top piece that I just created, so the whole thing is glued together and can easily be attached to the dollhouse with the use of the C shape that goes over the top of the window. So now what I'm showing you here are my two pieces I used for the second set of curtains, and an extra piece that is a little less than double the size of the normal curtain pieces. And I'm going to fold in the edges to make a trapezoid shape. This is going to make what I call my second topper, or my fancy topper. And I'm going to fold it in on both sides and add tacky glue. Again, this is the fabric that gave me a lot of trouble with hemming it with glue, so remember, depending on your type of fabric, you may want to use the sewing method instead of gluing the hem lines. After that is glued, you're going to want to put it into the water glue solution. I don't show you that in the video for some reason, but you do want to make sure that it's wet like we had it before. You're going to take the long end and center it on the C-shape tracing that I've done on the aluminum foil, and I'm going to pin at the very top corners of the C-shape. These pins are going through the fabric so that it holds it at the top. Next, I'm going to accordion fold from the bottom up, and as you could see, my hem had fallen out of the bottom, but that's okay, I'm just soldiering on at this point. And then I'm going to push them up so that I can see the armpit of the C-shape, if that makes sense. And I'm going to be pinning in that armpit, but not through the fabric. All I'm making is a point that the fabric can fold around. So I'm not pinning it into the fabric because I still need the fabric to move. Next, I'm pinning on the sides to make the fabric fold down. Now, in between the two middle pins, I'm going to start making a rounded, like a shallow U shape, and pulling the fabric down to make these folds. And this you can take as much or as little time as you want. Of course, the more time you take on it, the better it will look. I kind of rushed, but I still like the way it turned out. Once you have folds in the shallow U shape that you like, pin in between the folds like we did previously so that they will stay in place, and then you can start working on the outside pieces. And it's just the same as we did with the curtain pieces. You're just going to fold them down and pin in between the folds so you won't see the holes whenever it dries. And you're going to do that on both sides. Then you're going to let it dry just like we let the curtains dry. And then you should be ready to add it to your curtains. You're just going to put it on top of the already dried curtains and see how it fits, and then you're just going to add some tacky glue all around and then press it over your curtains so that it all sticks. You may have to hold this for a few minutes until the tacky glue holds on, but there you go. It's all one piece connected to the C shape in the back, so that it should fit over the window nicely. Now you're ready to add them into your dollhouse. You can either keep them in temporarily by adding some sticky tack or blue tack to the back of the C shapes, or you can put them in permanently by adding some glue. Putting them in temporarily would be a great way if you have a hard time making up your mind like I do, or if you like to change out your dollhouse theme seasonally. This would be an easy way to do that. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and as always, if you do follow this tutorial and make some of these curtains, I would love to see them on Instagram. You can tag me at Bentley House Minis. Also, if you have any other commonly used dollhouse items you would like to see me make a tutorial on, put that in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!